Sure.
Welcome back to the podcast. I am so pleased to bring on again Elliot S. Maggin. Elliot, we had you on the show last summer. How things been going with you since then?
I've been trying to get in shape. I'm just looking at my image here. It looks like it's awful.
You're fine. You, you,
Yeah.
you look better than a lot of people your age. You're great, and nobody cares about that. You are a living legend. People still refer to you and your comic books. I was reading some new Superman collections. I am curious. Did you see the Superman movie last summer, the new one? Did you see that one?
Sure.
Did you
Yeah,
like it?
sure. I did like it.
What did
I
you like
liked it.
about it?
I liked Corn Sweat. I liked his relationship with Lois. It was very frank, and my brother told me he didn't like the movie because he thought Superman was too human. I said I've been trying to make Superman human for 50 years, so that's a good thing. Yeah, I like the fact that he wasn't as self-assured as Julie Schwartz always wanted me to make him.
And he wasn't so super because he started
Well,
off the movie being getting the crap beat out of him, which I thought was a nice thing.
yeah, he wasn't
Arrogant,
as
maybe, and
self-important or
yeah.
self-involved, and I like that.
How about Lex Luthor?
He,
Did you like Lex?
Luther, he was good too. He wasn't my Luther, although he's closer to my Luther than Gene Hackman or any of those guys. He was more of a businessman, which I always wanted to make him. He became that after I left, pretty much. He had people working for him. He was like the center of activity. The thing about Luther is he's only a criminal because Superman is taking up too much space in his
Living there
intellectual real estate.
free rent up there in that mind of poor
Free
Luther.
rent, free rent Luther's brain, which is a lot of space there. Yeah, he's the greatest human being in the world, except for Superman, who may or may not be a human being. I don't know. He's certainly humanoid, and he may be human. Who knows? It depends on your interpretation of ancestry.
How do you feel about them two teaming up basically in the next movie and not being hero villain, but actually teaming up to save the world, which seems to be the course
Yeah.
they're going with the next movie. What do you think about like that? I'm just
Well, that's
curious.
kind of what I did in Last Son of Krypton 10,000 years ago. They should be teaming up once in a while. They have common interests. They have common loves. They're both interested in staying on Earth, for heaven's sakes. It's a good place to live if we
Because
don't mess it up too much.
refresh my memory. Your first story at DC was there
First
for
story
me.
was the Green Lantern, the Green Arrow story.
Okay,
What can one man do? I did that as a term paper and ended up
that's right.
selling it because I didn't like the grade I got on it. And then and then must there be a Superman?
So that was your first
Yeah,
Superman story then.
that was my first Superman story. I did a team up with Green Lantern, Green Lantern. At some point, Julie just leaned across the desk and said, "You think you're ready to do a Superman story?" And I said, "Yeah." I lied, but I did it. I didn't think I was ready. He did,
So
which was
did you
nice
for
of
that
him.
story, was it his idea or did you pitch the idea?
I keep ascribing it to Jeff Loeb because we had a conversation about it a few days before I went down to New York to sell it. I had a list of 15 story ideas on a legal pad, and I went through like 12 of them. And I got to this one thing where Julie just dismissed all of them as jejune or something. And when I got to this one, when I got to the idea that Superman was doing damage to the Earth by helping us, that kind of turned him on. He called people in from the hall and got me to repeat it to them. And we worked it out. We worked it out over the course of about an hour or two. His talking
So
sessions tended to be very long.
how do you feel that even after all this time, that story is referenced in a lot of Superman encyclopedias and compilations, and a lot of your stories in general are referenced. How do you, as Elliot S. Maggin, feel about all that?
I like it. When I showed it, I was still in college when it came out. And I had an honors advisor, a guy named John Matthews, who was a pop culture expert, American Studies Department. And I had him read it. And I sat there and watched him read it. And the first thing he said is, "I look forward to seeing all the sequels you're going to do to this." When he gave me the idea that this was a premise for a lot of stories about the character, a lot of directions the character could take. And that's pretty much what I did for the next 15 years. Um,
That story, Must There Be a Superman? I pretty much did my research. That has never been collected in an edition up till they have it coming out in an edition later this year.
which
Uh,
one?
I'm not. Must there be a Superman? I don't think it's ever really been
It has been.
a
I
lot.
don't
Has it
know.
been reprinted a lot?
No, I haven't seen it a lot, but they've reprinted it.
It's actually
Hardcovers
in
and
an
things like that.
anthology this year coming up. But how do you feel about them not reprinting a lot of the Elliot S. Maggin classics and even Carrie Bates and even the Bronze Age?
When I left as an editor, I was an editor for about 2 years, and it was an awful job. I just didn't like it. And I left precipitously at some point. I quit. I gave them 6 weeks notice, and they said, you can leave today. Apparently, the people down the hall had been bad mouthing me about something, and I just wasn't feeling good about being there. So they kept bad mouthing me. A producer told me when I moved to LA at that point, and a producer told me that people in DC had been saying bad things about me, had been knocking on me. And I don't quite know why, but I have suspicions. It wasn't about anything I did or said. It was just who I was. I had a better education than anybody else in the office.
And I guess,
And that was a pain in the ass for a lot of people.
did they realize who you were and the influence you had on Superman during the Bronze Age? Did they hold that against you, maybe?
There was there was a very conscious effort to start over when I left writing Superman. And because of my association with the character later on, anything I wrote after that point pretty much couldn't have Superman in it because of my association with him before. They wanted to dissociate from that period altogether. Okay, the reason I wrote LexCorp as I did, the novel, was because I created LexCorp 40 years ago, 50 years ago, how long ago, and didn't get much chance to do much with it. And for a long time, they had a wiki online, and there was a LexCorp entry, and they were using LexCorp as essentially a character in a bunch of movies and TV shows, and they continued it in the comics, and they never credited me for it until years later. I just kept talking on them about it, and eventually they did, and then Gunn decided to use Luthor Corp as the name of the company instead, which wasn't any different. It was the same thing, but they took their wiki entry out. I don't know.
So
They list people at the ends of these movies thanking them for inking the first story of a given character.
did you have any thank yous in the last Superman movie? I'm just curious for any. Did you have any credits or thank yous for in the last
No,
Superman
no,
movie? Nothing.
no. It was a long list. I'm looking at this list and I'm thinking, I was on this list. Somebody took me out. I don't know who. I don't know
That's
why.
so weird. Just from a fan perspective,
Callie was on it.
So why did you decide to go back to LexCorp after all these decades?
Wanted to write it. I came up with an idea. I liked it, and I wrote the book. And I figured I'd drop it on them as a fait accompli. And I said, here's a LexCorp book. You can publish this. And they said, oh, DC isn't publishing novels anymore. I said, I wasn't aware of that. So I published it myself.
They didn't give you any grief for publishing it?
Not yet.
Because
I created the concept. What they told me was, just don't use Metropolis and don't use Lex Luthor. And I said, and don't use Superman. I didn't use Superman, but you can't do it without Metropolis or Lex. So I just did it. I left it as it was.
Does it connect any way into the Superman mythos in any way, or is it just strictly about Lex Luthor?
It's in that world. It refers to incidents, origin incidents, that sort of thing. Refers to this enemy he's got. He keeps referring to as the alien. Doesn't use the word Superman anywhere.
But I think using the word, I think the word alien actually is more effective than Superman because you're really.
That's how he would refer to him. That's how he would refer to him. I don't think he addressed him as Superman very much in the comics, even.
Yeah, even in the movie, it was that alien. In the last Superman movie from last summer, it was not Superman, but the alien.
And that was there is stuff they've used that clearly is stuff I created. Okay, in the Superman and Lois show, at some point they refer to the photonucleic effect, which is the name of the principle for how solar energy translates into a Kryptonian superpowers, visual powers. What I made up. for a story I wrote that they never bought. You know, it's in a story about crypto that I put in a collection called An Enemy's Gift. And I go on for 2 paragraphs explaining the photonucleic effect, which is a word I made up for that story. And they used it in the TV show. So I know they're referencing all the stuff I write.
But just not giving you the credit for whatever reason.
Yeah.
That's so weird. So, in a nutshell, what's LexCorp about without revealing too much? And what type of Lex Luthor is in the story?
It's a human Lex Luthor. He's got a girlfriend, for heaven's sakes. He's got lots of girlfriends, but then he latches onto somebody. He's disaffected. He's moody. He's rich despite himself. He had no idea that he was going to become this rich or rich at all. But it makes sense to him that he is. He doesn't care much about his empire. What he cares about is the projects he does. And the project he decides to take on in this story is to solve the climate crisis. And he has 3 specific steps in order to solve the crisis and put the world right. He wants to save the world. It's his world. It belongs to him. He's the best thing in it, as far as he's concerned. And nobody has the right to despoil it. So he fixes it, or he tries to fix it. And I think it's a credible solution. I've been saying for years that what's going to pull us out of the climate crisis is technology. It's partly technology. There are 3 steps he takes in the course of this story that make things better. And this is a story about how he does it.
So, is this your final dipping into the Metropolis, Superman, Lex Luthor mythos, or do you have something else up your sleeve that you want to do?
When I stopped writing Superman, people kept asking me, what did I want to do next? Did I have more Superman stories to tell? And of course I did. I wanted to go into the relationship between Superman and Lex a lot. And this kind of does it from Lex's point of view. If they decide they're going to write novels, they're going to publish novels, and they came to me and asked me to do something, there's plenty I could do. But it would start with this LexCorp story. When I was writing Superman, I did a lot of delving into Lex's personality and his origins and what motivates him. And this is pretty much the word on how I would have approached him for the following 15 years if I'd had that time.
How long have you been working on LexCorp before you put it out?
Thinking about it forever. I actually sat down and write it maybe a year or 2 before I brought it out.
How can fans get this? Is it just through your website, or do you have it available through like booksellers?
It's on Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com. I think it's on allibris.com. Yeah, I haven't really done much to promote it until lately. What I was doing when you called was I was recording the last chapter of it
Do you
for
want
a
to
podcast.
Do you want to ever turn it into an audiobook?
I did.
Oh,
That's what I've been doing.
Okay.
I've got 23 and a half chapters. I'm working on the 24th.
So who's going to put it out as a something?
Me. I'm doing it as a podcast. Yeah, it's called Elliot Makes Stuff Up. And it's been hanging out there on the podcast world for a long time. I did audio versions of Last on a Krypton and Miracle Monday years ago, and I put them out a chapter at a time with a little commentary. And I haven't been tracking them particularly because I haven't looked for sponsors, but I just wanted them out there as a flag to fly.
Are they still out there in a platform that people can listen to, or is it dead now?
No, it's there. Elliot Makes Stuff Up podcast. And there are 26 episodes out there. I'm going to put in about 24 more when I finish this Luthor book, which is probably something I'll do before the end of today.
You began again in the 1970s. Did you actually hang out in the DC offices in the 1970s, or were you just like a drop and go? Or were you there like hanging out?
I hung out there. I would drop and go at the beginning, but then after I made friends, I hung out there quite a bit.
So did you, I know we talked about this last time, did you and Julie Schwartz have like legendary fights and argue over stuff?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they were so much fun. Every once in a while, we would have a big blowout and we'd stop talking to each other for a month.
Was that
So
typical of Julie, or was that typical of Julie and Elliot?
I think it was Julie and Elliot. People were intimidated by Julie, but I don't think many people argued with him.
And
Neil
you
argued
did.
with him.
You did, and
Yeah.
he probably respected you more for that. Is that fair to say? No?
I
Or were you a
I
big
think
pain in
he
his ass?
I think he probably respected me more and I was a pain in his ass. We were two kids from the outer boroughs. We were Jewish kids from Brooklyn and the Bronx. And of course we'd fight, despite the 35 years between us.
Who else did you hang
Uh,
around with?
Al Milgram was my roommate. We got an
Did not
apartment
know that.
together in Queens. We used to throw parties. Carrie, I used to go to lunch with Carrie all the time. And we would go to lunch and we'd go out for coffee at 3 in the morning. I don't know when he slept. I didn't. I just didn't. But we'd go out for coffee and work out plots. Whenever I did a Batman story, I always ran it by Carrie because he tightened it up for me. Batman needs a tight plot, and Carrie was really good at that.
And you weren't that great.
Um,
You weren't the best at Batman stories.
no, I only did 5 or 6 of them, I guess. Maybe I did more. I don't know, but I didn't do many, and I always ran them by Carrie.
Did not
I
know
spent
that.
more time plotting Batman stories with Carrie than with Julie. I'd bring him to Julie as a fait accompli, and he'd go, "Yeah, okay, go do that."
We talked about some Julie Schwartz stories last time. Give me an untailed Elliot Maggin Julia Schwartz story that you really haven't told very often, if you can.
Short story. He came to my brother's house for Passover the year after he lost his wife. We had a great time. My father was not a very traditional guy. He would pick up the book and he would leaf through it and he'd say, "Okay, what can we skip?" We were a family of 6 or 7. And my dad said, "Okay, Robin's my younger sister. Time to do the 4 questions." It was Aramaic thing you do, a very difficult piece of reading. And the youngest person at the table is supposed to do that. And Robin just wasn't interested. So at some point, Julie got impatient and picks up the book and reads the whole thing. It's a very difficult piece of Aramaic reading. It's not even Hebrew. And he did the whole thing. I said, "When's the last time you did that?" He said, "I think 40 years ago."
That is
Julie had a watch with Hebrew letters on it. And he said he got it for being the outstanding Hebrew school student in 1938 or whatever year it was he was bar mitzvah. And he said, "The governor's wife gave it to me." I said, "Oh, that's nice." He says, "And who was the governor's wife in 1930?" No, it was 1928. Who was the governor's wife in 1928? And I thought about it a while. I said, "Oh, gee, that was Eleanor Roosevelt." Yeah, he came to my school. She came to my Hebrew school and gave me this watch. So I was hoping he'd leave it to me in his will, but he didn't.
so. Did you have much interaction with Carmine Infantino during the time as publisher, or was he just
I'm
outside of
sorry?
your? Yeah, Carmine. Did you have much interaction with him, or was he just
Oh, yeah,
different?
Carmine was great. I liked Carmine. Carmine was my buddy. He told me to paint my apartment white. I painted it brown.
He didn't like
But
that picture.
no, but he was not much of a businessman. He was not much of a publisher, but he was maybe the most talented designer of art I've ever met. He had this job. Okay, this is where he got in trouble. Carmine gets a bad rap
Which I think is
only because
unfair.
yeah, only because he tried to rise to an occasion that he wasn't suited for. When Kinney National bought DC, the guys from Kinney, who later became Warner Brothers, looked around all their little subsidiaries that they bought, and they looked at DC and they said, "Okay, we have 6 editors and 1 editorial director." That was Carmine, was the editorial director, and it was his job to design covers. He would just lay out the covers very roughly and give them to Nick Cardy or Neil Adams or somebody to draw. And you remember the Captain Thunder story I did?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
There was this amazing cover on that book. It was drawn by Nick Cardy, and Nick is the only guy who got credit for it, but Carmine designed it. He had these 2 characters flying at each other with their fists extended, and the emblems on their chest were both visible from different angles simultaneously on a single image. I just thought it was the most amazing layout. He did that. He did 50 of them a month, for heaven's sakes. And that was his job.
Do you think he got
So the
shafted?
guys from Kinney,
Do you think he
huh?
got shafted?
Oh, yeah. Oh, for heaven's sakes, yeah. He should have just kept doing art. So the guys from Kinney made him president of the company because he was the only editorial director. An editorial director sounded like something above the editors. It wasn't. It was his job.
Because he didn't seek the
Um,
job out. He just got tossed in the job and really didn't have much of a choice in being the
well,
publisher.
I suppose he had a choice. They offered him the job of publisher, and he'd say, "Yeah, wouldn't you get to be president of the company?" Okay, sure. So they put him in the office down the end of the hall, and he kept doing the same job. He kept designing covers, 50 of them a month. And he wasn't a businessman. At some point he had to go to these meetings with the guys from Kinney, and he felt embarrassed. At some point he asked Julie for a reading list. What can I read to seem educated? He was way out of his depth when it came to business. And it's a shame because he was just an amazing artist and a better designer than he was an artist.
So, what was it like when that big, huge seismic change when Carmen Infantino was fired and Jeanette Kahn came in? Did you like her?
That was the fact that she was a woman wasn't a big deal. A bunch of guys thought it was a big deal, but it was never a big deal. I got along with her at the beginning. She wasn't president of the company when she came in. That was what was offered to her. And Saul Harrison, who was vice president, executive vice president at the time, said, okay, make her president and I'm leaving. So they made him president. And he was more suited to be president than Carmine had been. But Saul was way old school. I remember Mike Uslin used to teach a class at Ohio State. He taught a class in comics. He was like 19, 20 years old. And he came up to the office. I think this is when I met him. And he told Saul he was teaching a class in comics. And all Saul wanted to do was look at him side-eyed and say, what do you know about comics? Like Saul just wanted to be the dominant guy. Saul was a printer's devil. He was around when they printed the first issue of Detective Comics, and he wanted everybody to know it. And I think that was more important to him than doing the job. When he retired and Jeanette became president, she had the wingspan to do the job, and she was capable of it. I just don't think she was part of the demographic that could make creative decisions.
Was it a
And she
big
didn't
shock?
leave Creek.
Was it a big
Huh?
shock? Was it a big shock when Carmine got fired back then, or was it
Yeah.
expected? So it came out of
No,
the blue.
it didn't come out of the blue. It was because of the Siegel and Schuster mess, ultimately. When Cherry and Joe made a big deal about, they were making a big deal for 40 years, but Carmen pretty much manhandled it, the negotiation for a pension for them. And it wasn't his job to handle it at all. So a guy from, was it Warner at that point? I guess it was Warner Books at that point, Warner Communications at that point. A guy named Jay Emmett pretty much handled it. And Jay was from Licensing Corporation of America. He was the nephew of Jack Leibowitz, and he was a bright guy. He was able to negotiate. And what he ultimately did was he negotiated with Neil Adams for the deal that Cherry and Joe got. But Carmine didn't. He didn't distinguish himself. And it was a crisis that he didn't mishandle it. He just didn't handle it. And that's when they got fed up with him. So they brought in Jeanette and fired him.
You think she was good for the company? That was a good choice overall, or can't really say.
If she had done her job as an administrator, yeah, she would have been good. She knew about publishing, she knew about children's literature, but children's literature was not what we were publishing. She was real interested in film and television, and she opened up a lot of doors for the company with that stuff.
So, is it true that you created Superman Prime? Is that true? You co-created Superman Prime?
Superboy Prime. Yeah.
Sorry, Superboy Prime. How did that come about? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was like anything else. It was a character that I had that I created for a story. It wasn't, I didn't mean for him to be anything ongoing. Len Wein used to call us Len. He used to call his house the house that Lucius Fox built. He had a nice house up in San Fernando Valley, with a pool with rocks in it. It was great. But he called it the house that Lucius Fox built because when he wrote the first story that contained Lucius Fox as a secondary character, Paul said, you should do a creator's contract on that. And he said, what's a creator's contract? And Paul said, it just establishes that you're the guy that created this character. So if he gets used again, you'll get some royalty. And I was an editor up there. And I'd never heard of a creator's contract. So I never signed one, never had one. And I talked to Len about this like years later when I was upset over something they had done with LexCorp. He said, he didn't have a creator's contract. I said, what's a creator's contract? He said, it's a spacesuit. If you're in space and you got a spacesuit, you're fine. If you don't have a spacesuit, you die. Somebody reminded Len to do this creator's contract with Lucius Fox. He created Swamp Thing. He created Wolverine. He created a lot of characters.
Yes.
Great stuff. And he managed to monetize a lot of it. I didn't do that.
Did you like Len at the time?
Oh, I love Len. Len was my friend for how long? He was 68 when he died. I'd known him since he was 18, 19.
Oh, okay. I know you don't read much of the comic books these days, but are you aware that Superboy Prime has had a long life in the comic books?
Yeah.
Are you surprised by that? That it just
I'm surprised in the same way Lucius Fox surprised me. It's when Len created Wolverine, he was just a little guy with a lot of energy and didn't give up. The business about the adamantium bones and things like that wasn't there. The regeneration, the immortality, that all got added on. And Len didn't do it. He said, when you create a character, he goes off on his own. And something comes of him or something doesn't. It's like having kids. And you just have to let him do it. That's the attitude I took with Superboy Prime. They made him a bad guy. They made him a good guy. They made him ugly. I don't know. What did they
do you feel do you think it's cool that he's survived? He's been good. He's been bad.
Yeah, it's cool.
Do you know
he's not unexpected?
Do you know he's back in the comic book?
You can't predict it. It's just something you create is going to do that.
Do you know he's back in the comic books again?
Yeah, I heard that.
And he's actually getting ready to take over one of the Superman books in a couple months.
Really?
Yes, Elliot. I didn't think you knew that because DC's got this big event going on. Superboy Prime has been floating around for the last 6 months, 8 months in the comic books. And they're getting ready to do, because they did Reign of the Superman back when they killed him off. They're getting ready to do Reign of the Superboys, where the various Superboy characters take over the various comic books. And I know they actually brought back Kal-El as Superboy, who's been in Action Comics for like almost a year now. And Superboy Prime is getting ready to take over one of the other titles. I forget which one. But yeah, Superboy Prime is going to be the star of one of the Superman titles in the next couple months. So they're doing this big storyline called Reign of the Superboys. So I just thought you'd find that interesting because I know you don't read comic books much.
I have a friend who's a lawyer who was working on this stuff for me years ago. And at some point I threw my hands up in the air and said, it'd be nice to have some royalties for the kids.
So for a while there, Superboy Prime was in, he was out, and in the last couple of years they brought him back again, and he's getting ready to star in one of the Superman titles. And I know you don't read comic books very much. I know.
That's just wonderful. I don't know.
Your last story, if I'm correct, was in Superman 420 from 86, and We Are the Dreamer of Dreams. Is that correct? Was that your last?
Yeah, I think that was the last Superman story.
Did you know it was your last Superman story?
Yeah. I probably could have done a couple more after that, but yeah, I knew it was the last.
Did you try to do anything special to wrap things up as your run of Superman, or you just wrote another Superman story and just said,
put my brother-in-law in it? The Wayne King character in We Are the Dreamers of the Dreams. That was my brother-in-law. That was all.
So you don't really read the comic books anymore. Is there any particular reason why?
I've got a big 80-inch television here. I don't even go to the movies much anymore. I got a big 80-inch television. I got lots of books. I'm not interested in writing comics anymore. I like writing novels.
So if DC
Um,
came back for nostalgia and said, "Hey, Elliot, you want to write a Superman story again?"
I guess I'm not. I think I'd say let's do it as a prose story or a novel or something like that. But they tell me they're not publishing novels anymore. No, I'm not interested in that.
Okay, Elliot, we have talked about a ton of stuff today. Before we wrap things up, do you have anything else you want to say?
I go to the conventions here and there. I was in San Diego last year and I did a panel with a bunch of the guys that are doing Superman now. And they were just great kids. It makes me happy that they appreciate what I did and what they are getting the chance to do. I'm glad they do. That's all.
Elliot S. Maggin, icon creator of so many Superman stories in the Bronze Age. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.